Welcome back to her Fireside Stories, the place where gripping family dramas unfold right before your eyes. Today, we have a tale so compelling, it might just change how you view family loyalty forever. Imagine this: a loving grandmother forced by her own son to babysit around the clock and sleep on an uncomfortable couch, treated not as family, but as unpaid help. But what happens next is a twist no one saw coming. This seemingly gentle grandmother decides to teach her son a ruthless lesson by abruptly cutting off his monthly allowance. You won't believe how it ends, and trust me, you'll want to stick around to find out if her bold decision finally opens her son's eyes or pushes her family to the breaking point. Before we dive into this captivating story, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and support her Fireside Stories. Your subscription means the world to us and helps bring even more incredible tales your way. And as always, don't forget to leave a comment sharing your thoughts, where you're listening from, and what you might have done in her shoes. Now, let's begin. I never thought I'd shudder in shock at how my own child treated me, but there I was, shoulders tense, heart pounding, questioning my entire existence as a mother. I stood in the foyer of my son's home, suitcase in hand, struggling to comprehend how the sweet little boy I'd raised could so casually tell me, "Mom, hope you're okay sleeping on the couch. We've got no extra space." My name is Rowena, and I'd traveled all the way to help with my grandson, only to be greeted like some second-class guest with an expiration date. My son, Damien, was barely making eye contact, shifting uncomfortably by the door. In the next room, my daughter-in-law, Lucia, was so absorbed in her phone that she couldn't be bothered to properly acknowledge me. Their baby Nico wailed in the background, a relentless high-pitched cry that signaled exhaustion on everyone's part. It all started with a single phone call. Damien, in that weary, pleading tone I recognized from his childhood days, asking if I could come to the rescue because Lucia was at her wits' end. The baby never slept more than 3 hours at a time, and both parents were operating on fumes. I was living alone, retired, with days as quiet as a Sunday library. Of course I'd come. I hopped onto a bus the very next morning, an overnight bag in tow, dreaming of cooing a newborn to sleep and giving the kids some well-deserved rest. I pictured warm family dinners where we'd laugh about silly parenting mishaps and reminisce about the days I raised Damien on my own. Maybe Lucia and I would bond over tips for easing postpartum aches, or share a moment sipping tea while baby Nico dozed peacefully in my arms. But the moment I set foot in their living room, that romantic notion evaporated. Damien pointed at the couch, mumbling about a guest room cluttered with random junk. Lucia offered a half-hearted wave before disappearing. No smile, no "we're so happy you're here," just a directive: sleep on the couch. And if that wasn't heartbreaking enough, the next few days revealed an even deeper layer of disappointment, as though my presence was an obligation they only grudgingly fulfilled. By the way, friend, how are you finding the story so far? If you're into it, comment 1 to let me know you're enjoying it, or comment 2 if you think this could be improved. The first night, I tried to make myself as comfortable as possible on that lumpy sofa, which had a faded floral pattern and creaked each time I shifted my weight. The air felt thick, not just from the summer heat, but from the tension humming beneath the veneer of domestic bliss. Even with the lights off, I could see the faint glow from underneath my son's bedroom door. The silhouettes danced, Damien rummaging for something, Lucia pacing with the baby. I listened to every muffled cry, every hissed complaint. "He's crying again, Damien, get up!" Or, "I'm exhausted, can't your mom handle it?" My heart squeezed at that. Of course I'd handle it, but it wasn't like they called me in to help with feedings or rocking Nico to sleep. They just seemed resentful that I existed at all. In the daytime, I did my best to be useful. I prepared simple soups and oatmeal in hopes of easing Lucia's postpartum discomfort. I tried to lighten her chores, folding laundry, washing bottles, wiping down counters. The baby was tiny, all big eyes and chubby cheeks, his infant coos and cries sending waves of nostalgia through me. When I tentatively offered, "I can rock him while you nap," Lucia usually gave me a once over, as though assessing my competence, then wordlessly passed Nico over and disappeared into her bedroom. Sometimes I'd see her emerge to scold Damien about chores he'd forgotten or to gripe about the mortgage. Then her eyes would flick my way and she'd stiffen, no question of how I was faring or if the couch was too warm at night, just instructions. His clothes need to be hand washed, not machine washed, Rowena. Or, "You're sterilizing the bottles wrong. Use the bigger pot." I reminded myself that postpartum women can be moody. Sleep deprivation can turn even the kindest soul into a snapping turtle. But as days bled into a week, the household atmosphere soured. Damien rarely stuck around after work, claiming he had projects that demanded his attention. Lucia scrolled her phone, often forgetting to look up even when I was in the middle of a sentence. I tried to grin and bear it, yet a quiet ache spread within me like ink in water. 3 days after I arrived, I woke up to the baby's frantic cries at dawn. My neck and shoulders ached from the stiff, too short couch, my muscles screaming for a real mattress. I shuffled toward the bedroom, hoping to help. Lucia cradled Nico, stifling a yawn, while Damien sprawled out in bed, snoring. She glanced up, annoyance briefly flashing across her face. "He's hungry," she said. "I'm about to breastfeed." Her tone suggested she neither needed nor wanted my interference. I retreated, picking up on the tension I'd somehow aggravated by existing in their space. Later that day, the suffocating summer heat pushed the temperature inside their small apartment into the high 80s. Nico's cheeks reddened with perspiration, and he whimpered incessantly. We had a standing fan, but it circulated nothing but warm air. Spotting a dusty air conditioner mounted on the wall, I reasoned that a quick, cooling blast might soothe Nico's discomfort. Without a second thought, I turned it on. The unit roared to life, emitting a relief of crisp air. For a few blessed minutes, Nico stopped fussing. I rocked him gently, humming an old lullaby from when Damien was small. My t-shirt clung to my back, drenched in sweat, but that cool breeze was heaven sent for both the baby and me. Then Lucia burst into the room, her features pinched. She marched straight to the AC and slammed the power button. "Do you know how expensive this is?" she snapped, not even sparing me a glance. "Electricity bills don't pay themselves. You can't go flipping switches whenever you feel like it. We're already strapped for cash." Her words cut me to the core, not just for the scolding tone, but for the complete disregard of the fact that I'd done it for her child. Embarrassment blazed hot in my chest. I realized then that she didn't see me as a caring grandmother. She viewed me as an unnecessary expense, or worse, a threat to her budget. Something in me shifted, like ice cracking underfoot. I held Nico close, trying to keep from trembling, uncertain if it was anger or heartbreak. Where are you reading from, by the way? Let me know if you're enjoying this or if the story resonates with your own experiences. Late that evening, I lay restless on the couch. The air outside was still, the window open to invite a breeze that stubbornly refused to come. Mosquitoes buzzed around the living room like tiny tormentors, feasting on my ankles. Normally, I'd be the type to slip out onto the balcony to watch the moon or sip cool lemon water on nights like this. Here, though, I felt like a prisoner in someone else's home, uneasy, unwelcome. My thoughts wandered to the countless times I'd dropped everything for Damien. When his father and I divorced, I became both mom and dad, stitching together our life with secondhand clothes and budget meals. I remembered paying for sports equipment he wanted, consoling him when he scraped his knees, working extra shifts so he could have a decent laptop for college. And now that I was retired, I had quietly been sending him monthly checks to help with his mortgage. My late husband and I had saved up for years, certain that investing in our son's future was the best gift we could give. That generosity had continued long after my husband passed, with me funneling $3,000 a month to keep Damien and Lucia afloat. If you told me back then that I'd be forced to sleep on a worn couch and chastised over an air conditioner bill while caring for their baby, I would have laughed in disbelief. Yet, there I was, replaying every slight. Lucia's instructions barked like commands, Damien's passive shrugs, the utter lack of gratitude or basic warmth. My chest was heavy with the realization that my kindness had been reduced to a transaction, something they felt entitled to rather than appreciative of. I reminded myself that tomorrow was a new day, determined to find a gentler approach. Perhaps I'd buy groceries, whip up a hearty meal that wasn't too spicy for my stomach, and see if I could coax a real conversation out of Lucia. But as I closed my eyes to the hum of mosquitoes, I knew something fundamental had cracked. Love, after all, can be tested by the weight of disrespect, and I could feel the cracks forming deeper and deeper. Your feedback matters. If this situation sounds familiar, or if you have advice, share it. Comment 1 if you think Rowena should confront Lucia directly, or 2 if you think she should remain patient. Morning arrived with a punishing brightness that streamed through the curtains, offering no mercy to my puffy eyes. Damien had already left for work, and Lucia was cooped up in the bedroom with the baby, music playing softly. I made myself coffee, sipped it, and tried to ignore how cold it tasted after sitting untouched in my mug for too long. Eventually, Lucia emerged, wearing an oversized t-shirt, hair hastily tied. Her eyes were ringed with exhaustion, yet her phone was glued to her hand. Without a greeting, she mumbled, "We're running low on formula, and the baby's clothes need washing again. Could you handle that?" Then, as if remembering a slight politeness, she tagged on, "Please," her tone more mechanical than kind. I mustered a nod, silently stepping around her to gather baby clothes and the empty formula can. It wasn't that I minded the chores. In fact, I welcomed a chance to do something tangible for little Nico. But each request felt like a commandment. No warmth, no gratitude, just a list of tasks that validated my sense that I was being used. I trudged through the humidity to the local grocery store. As I pushed my cart, I reflected on how drastically the dynamic had shifted. Was it my fault for not setting boundaries from the start? Should I have insisted on an actual bed to sleep in? Or at least some courtesy? Guilt gnawed at me, mingling with the frustration. By the time I returned, arms laden with formula, fresh vegetables, and a few little gifts for Nico, I was drenched in sweat. Lucia barely lifted her gaze. "Just leave the groceries there," she said, tapping on her phone. Then, with the groceries in plain sight, my offering to keep her household running, she walked away without another word. My chest tightened. It was an ordinary moment, but it crystallized everything. The sense of being dismissed, my efforts unacknowledged, her attention more devoted to her phone than the person who just hauled supplies through a sweltering afternoon. Perhaps I'd been naive to expect a thank you. But not even a nod? That stung like salt rubbed into a fresh wound. As the day dragged on, I tried to channel my hurt into productivity, boiling water to sterilize bottles, carefully folding Nico's tiny onesies, gently wiping down the sticky kitchen counter. At one point, Nico was fussy beyond measure, his cries hitting an octave that felt like it could shatter glass. Lucia ambled out of her bedroom with her phone, eyebrows knotted, but instead of scooping him up or soothing him, she simply said, Rowena, can you handle this? I need a break. I took the baby, heart aching for the little one who couldn't understand the tension in the house. I paced the living room, bouncing him lightly, singing a lullaby that used to calm Damien when he was a newborn. My lower back groaned under the weight. Nico was only a few months old, but the constant motion was taxing. Still, I relished the contact, remembering the preciousness of those first months of a child's life. The faint fragrance of baby powder clung to his soft skin, and as his cries slowed, I felt a surge of tenderness I hadn't experienced in days. When he finally fell asleep, I placed him gently in his bassinet. Lucia emerged briefly to see if he was settled, then disappeared again without a word. I glanced at the time, 9:30, and Damien still wasn't home. He'd texted earlier. "Running late, Mom. Sorry." A swirl of resentment and concern churned inside me. Could they truly be so overwhelmed that they didn't realize how poorly they were treating me? Or were they simply self-absorbed? I decided to step onto the balcony for a moment of air. The view overlooked a row of streetlights, a quiet road below. Something about the distant hum of cars reminded me that there was a world outside this claustrophobic dynamic, a world I could still enjoy. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from an old friend checking in. "How's the babysitting going?" I stared at the words, wryly thinking that babysitting didn't even begin to describe it. In truth, I felt like an unpaid, invisible housekeeper with no place to rest. Let me know if you're following along. Comment 1, if you've ever been in a situation like this. 2, if you're just intrigued by the drama. And things might have continued in that painful pattern, me biting my tongue, Lucia ignoring me, and Damien guiltily slipping off to work, if not for what happened on the fourth day. The temperature hit record highs, turning the apartment into a near sauna. Poor Nico's cheeks were permanently flushed, and tiny beads of sweat formed on his neck. Around midday, the air grew impossibly thick, and his fussing crescendoed. Hoping for a moment of mercy for that poor baby, I switched on the air conditioner again, promising myself I'd keep it low, just enough to bring the temperature down to something livable. Immediately, Lucia stormed in from the hallway, her posture radiating rage. She flicked it off with a dramatic stab of her finger. "What did I say about this?" she snapped. "We're not made of money, Rowena. If you're feeling hot, use the fan." Her eyes flicked to Nico, who was whimpering softly in my arms, and then right back to me, unreadable but cold. I opened my mouth to protest, for Nico's sake if nothing else, but something in her glare warned me there was no reasoning to be had. My stomach twisted. All I could think was, she values the electricity bill more than her child's comfort. More than my comfort, too, but I'd resigned myself to discomfort from day one. For the rest of that day, I quietly endured the stifling heat, cradling Nico with a handheld fan. By nighttime, I developed a dull headache from dehydration, but I didn't complain. The tension reached a boiling point at dinner. Lucia served a meal spiced with jalapenos, garlic, and a dash of hot sauce. My own diet is fairly mild. Spicy foods tend to upset my stomach. I tried a few bites, but my throat burned. When I asked if we could maybe set aside a portion without spice, she gave a derisive snort. "I can't cook separate meals," she said. "We're too busy for that." Damien stared at his plate, fiddling with his fork, offering no defense. I ended up sipping cold water and nibbling half a slice of bread. I was a ghost at that table, present but unseen, yearning for a crumb of kindness that never came. Later that night, I replayed every degrading moment in my mind, each replay more painful than the last. My body was on the sofa, but my spirit felt like it was somewhere else entirely, lost in the swirl of memories from when Damien was a child. I thought of how I'd taught him compassion, generosity, and gratitude, values I'd hoped he'd carry into adulthood. Was this how it all turned out? Midway through my reflections, my phone buzzed. It was a reminder to transfer funds for the mortgage, something I'd set up automatically at the end of each month. My monthly $3,000 that I'd been sending them had always been framed as helping them get on their feet, especially after Nico's birth. We'd never drawn up a contract, never formally agreed on an end date. To Damien and Lucia, it seemed to have become a given, an unspoken perpetual arrangement. I had an unsettling flash of clarity. They're used to taking, I thought. They expect the money. They expect me to do the chores. They expect me to keep quiet on the couch. The sense of entitlement grated against my raw nerves. As I stared at the message, I realized I didn't want to hit send. Why was I still funding a home where I wasn't even afforded a bed to sleep on? A home that refused to cool the room for their baby, let alone me. Before I could dwell on it further, the baby's cries tore through the thin walls again. Duty propelled me up, and I hurried to see if I could help. Damien was pacing, looking harried, while Lucia was on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling. She glanced at me, yawned, then got up to retreat to the bedroom. I didn't say a word. I simply cradled Nico, rocking him with gentle pats on his back. My mind was already made up, though. I just didn't realize it yet. How the next morning I would quietly pack my things, how I'd decline Damien's pleas to stay, how the entire dynamic was about to shift on its axis. Engagement check. If you're still here, comment 1 to let me know you're hooked, or 2 if you're taking a break. When dawn broke, I gathered my belongings, a few changes of clothes, my phone charger, and a tiny bag of personal items. I hadn't brought much in the first place because I'd expected them to provide some basics. Damien was still asleep, his alarm set for 8. Lucia was in bed with earplugs in, oblivious to the world. The only one awake was Nico, squirming in his bassinet, so I gently rocked him until he fell back asleep. Then I paused in the living room, scanning the messy traces of a household that had no time or inclination to express simple warmth. On the coffee table lay a half-finished baby bottle, a smudge of dried formula staining the glass. Next to it, the TV remote perched precariously on a stack of baby wipes. The entire space reeked faintly of sour milk and stale air, a testament to how overwhelmed or indifferent they were. My chest felt tight with conflicting emotions. On one hand, I didn't want to leave Nico without a doting caretaker, but on the other, how could I remain in a place where I was barely treated like a person? Just then, as if prompted by fate, Lucia's bedroom door creaked open. She stepped out, eyes half-lidded with sleep, her hair a messy nest. She froze, seeing me with my suitcase upright. "You're leaving?" she asked, voice flat. I nodded. "I have responsibilities back home," I replied. "I came to help you two with the baby, but I guess I'm not needed here anymore." My tone was calm, but inside I felt the threat of tears. She stared at me for a moment, then mumbled, "Suit yourself," shrugged, and shuffled back to bed. The bedroom door clicked shut, punctuating the moment like an exclamation point on my decision. I inhaled, feeling both heartbreak and relief coursing through me. Then I walked out of their apartment, closing the door quietly behind me. In the corridor's silence, I texted Damien, "I'm heading home. You and Lucia can handle Nico. Take care." A wave of finality washed over me, though I had no idea how that simple choice would reverberate through our lives. While I was squinting through my reading glasses trying to figure out how to repot the plants on the balcony, my phone started vibrating on the table. The screen lit up with a familiar name. Evan right beside it was a photo of him holding baby Simon, both of them grinning so wide it felt like the sunshine had spilled right into my living room. My heart softened in an instant. I sat down. The little trowel wiped my hands on my apron and quickly picked up the call. Mom Evan's voice came through low and hurried, laced with a tiredness that had just a hint of childlike pleading. "Are you busy these days?" I chuckled. "I'm retired, sweetheart. What could I possibly be busy with you? On the other hand, you sound wiped out. Trouble at work. No, not work. He paused, and in the background, I could hear the faint, fragmented whimpers of a baby. It's Lara. He's really worn out. It's been nonstop with the baby day and night. He barely gets any sleep. She's lost so much weight before he could finish. Simon's cry suddenly pierced through the line, sharp, high-pitched, and straight into my ear. Evan let out a long sigh, heavy with exhaustion and helplessness. You hear that when this little guy gets going, no one stands a chance. Mom, we're really at our limit. We need help in that moment. My heart tightened, pulled by the sound of my grandson's cries. He's barely over 3 months old, still in that soft, cuddly stage that melts your insides. Just from a photo. That little round face in the picture had already made me smile more. Then once Laura had a C-section, and after the birth, I had wanted to help. But her mother was staying over then, and I didn't want to overstep now that her mom had gone. It was clear the two of them were in over their heads. I'll be there, I said without a second thought. Don't worry, I'll pack a bag tonight and buy a bus ticket first thing tomorrow. It's been years since my husband passed. The house has been quiet. Too quiet, if I'm honest. So the chance to see Evan and the baby to be useful, to be needed again, well, that warmed something deep in me. After I hung up, I sat there for a moment, heart full, already making mental notes. I'd need to bring a few small gifts, maybe some breathable cotton onesies for the baby, something soft and comfy for summer, and those organic cloth diapers I got from a friend a while back, so much gentler on the skin than the store-bought disposables for Laura. I remembered she once mentioned she liked those collagen gummies. Said they were good for the skin. I'll bring a few boxes just right for postpartum recovery. As I moved around the house pulling things together, that little ache of loneliness I'd been carrying seemed to dissolve into the buzz of anticipation. I even dug out an old parenting guide I'd saved thinking I could brush up on how to make baby food or soothe the colic with gentle massage. After all, I raised Evan myself, now that he has a child of his own. How could I just stand by helping out isn't a chore. It's an honor, even if it meant putting this old body to the test. It would be worth every ounce of effort. I arrived home from my abrupt departure, feeling a mixture of shame, relief, and uncertainty. My small, tidy condo welcomed me with its familiar hush. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, and inhaled deeply. It smelled of lavender from the diffuser I kept in the corner, a soothing fragrance I'd grown to love in my solitude. My phone sat heavily in my hand, as if reminding me that despite fleeing Damien's place, I wasn't truly free. There were calls to make, questions to answer. Sure enough, by mid-afternoon, Damien reached out, voice frantic. "Mom, what's going on? Lucia said you up and left. Is everything okay? We need you." Need me? The irony stung. "I'm fine," I answered, keeping my tone neutral. "But I have a life too, Damien." The silence on his end spoke volumes, a thick confusion that revealed how little he'd considered my perspective. He began stammering about the baby's schedule, the mortgage, how they were overwhelmed. Only a few days earlier, I would have melted, anxious to help. Now, I felt the faintest flicker of defiance. "I can't come running every time you two hit a snag," I said softly, yet firmly. "If you and Lucia truly need more help, you might consider hiring a nanny. Or maybe you'll find that you can manage once you stop taking me for granted." His silence was so long that I thought the call had dropped. Then, in a subdued voice, he mumbled, "All right, I get it. We'll figure something out." The line clicked off. I set my phone aside, heart pounding. Despite my resolve, guilt pricked me. Nico was my grandson. I loved him dearly. But the simple truth was that love had to coexist with self-preservation. For the first time, I felt how liberating it was to choose myself. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea, sat by the window, and closed my eyes. My mind wandered to the monthly allowance. The date for the transfer loomed, but my finger hovered over the button, paralyzed with indecision. Could I really pull it all away just like that? Let's hear from you. Ever have a similar dilemma where love for family clashed with self preservation? Comment 1 if yes, comment 2 if no. Sleep found me fitfully that night. I tossed and turned, wrestling with the abrupt shift in family dynamics. By sunrise, I sat at my dining table, laptop open, bank account details in view. For over 2 years, I had faithfully wired $3,000 monthly to help Damien and Lucia with the mortgage. They had wanted a larger house, something suitable for a family, and I, in my eagerness to support, had thought it a wonderful idea. After all, I was retired, had some savings, and felt it only right to give my son a leg up in life. But somewhere along the line, that helping hand became an unspoken contract. My support turned into their entitlement, and I realized that in giving them so much financial security, I had stripped them of any need to be grateful or responsible. The memory of Lucia scowling over a mere hour of air conditioning for her overheated child replayed in my mind. Her glare, her cold voice, the comfort she denied Nico in favor of saving money, money that wasn't even wholly theirs. A swirl of anger and sadness gurgled in my stomach. I moved my cursor to the transfer funds button, paused, then hovered over cancel. My pulse pounded. Could I bear the fallout of such a decision? Damien would be furious. Lucia might wage a social media smear campaign for all I knew, but would continuing to pour my savings into their household only feed their lack of accountability? For a while, I stared at the screen, taking deep, measured breaths to calm myself. Then I clicked cancel. A small confirmation popped up. Your scheduled transfer has been successfully canceled. The sudden sense of finality made my knees tremble, but another sensation emerged, a lightness in my chest, as though I'd been freed from invisible shackles. I shut my laptop, tears unexpectedly hot in my eyes. It was the right move, I told myself, even if it hurt. Moments later, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. My heart lurched, suspecting it might be Damien already. Bracing myself, I answered, but it was an old friend from church asking if I'd like to help with the upcoming bake sale. My shoulders sagged with relief, and for the first time in a long while, I said, "Yes, I have time." At the bake sale that weekend, I had a moment to reconnect with a life outside the drama. Rows of colorful cupcakes, fruit tarts, and homemade pies drew in families from all around. A couple of friends asked about Damien, and I gave a short, polite update. He and Lucia are adjusting to parenthood. I left out the messy details. The chatter was a welcome distraction, but a gnawing worry lingered at the back of my mind. What would Damien do when he realized the funds weren't coming in? My answer arrived sooner than expected. On the Monday after the bake sale, my phone pinged with a series of increasingly frantic texts from Damien. Mom, is something wrong with the bank? Money didn't come. Mom, we're short on the mortgage. Are you okay? Call me urgent. The rapid succession of messages validated my suspicion. They treated my allowance as a permanent fixture in their budget. I sighed, setting down a mixing spoon I'd been using to stir up batter for leftover brownies. Emotions warred inside me. Pity for Damien's stress, guilt for pulling the plug, anger at how I'd been treated, and an odd sense of empowerment. Eventually, I typed back, Damien, I've canceled the monthly payment. You and Lucia need to handle things on your own from now on. I'm sorry if this inconveniences you, but it's time. Minutes later, the phone rang. I picked up to a rushed, almost panicky voice. Mom, you can't just stop it like this, he said, sounding more disbelieving than angry. We have a baby, bills, everything. The frustration seeped through, though he tried to keep his voice controlled. We had an agreement until I got my promotion, remember? You said you'd support us. I took a breath, willing my voice to remain steady. An agreement works both ways, Damien. I trusted you both would be responsible, and I expected at least a modicum of respect. But when I stayed at your house, I slept on a couch, got no decent food, and was scolded for cooling your baby during a heat wave. That's not how I'm willing to live anymore. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with someone you love? Let me know. Damien faltered. Mom, it's not that we don't appreciate you, he began, voice cracking with the strain of searching for the right words. Things are just stressful. Lucia's overwhelmed, and we're behind on a bunch of bills. The baby's formula alone costs a fortune, and yes, we're both exhausted. We didn't mean to make you feel unwelcomed. I closed my eyes, tears gathering behind my lids. Hearing a hint of remorse in his voice pricked my heart. I understand you're both stressed, I said softly, but that doesn't justify how I was treated. I'm willing to forgive, but I'm not willing to keep paying for a home that offers me no place in it. I raised you better than this. Silence stretched, broken only by the faint crackle of the phone line. Finally, Damien sighed. All right, Mom, I get it. Maybe she overreacted. I'll talk to her. But are you really cutting us off? Just like that? He sounded both hurt and bewildered, as though he'd never considered that the flow of money might stop. Not just like that, I said, gentle but firm. I've been thinking about this for a while, and honestly, I need my own funds for my future too. I'm retired, Damien. I'm not made of money. Sometimes people forget that just because I'm older and have some savings doesn't mean I can keep forking it out forever. And he attempted one last appeal. But Nico, I interjected gently, Nico needs parents who step up. That's you and Lucia. If you genuinely need more income, maybe you both should reevaluate your expenses or find better paying jobs. Being a parent is tough. I learned that firsthand when I was your age. There was no yelling, no slammed phone, just a sad quiet as the weight of my words sank in. I'll figure it out, Damien murmured at last, ending the call. My heart ached, but I also felt a measure of resolve. This was the price of setting boundaries. Sometimes it hurt like heartbreak, but it was necessary all the same. Days slipped by, and I filled my time with small joys. A new aqua aerobics class, gardening on my tiny balcony, coffee dates with a neighbor. My phone remained ominously silent regarding Damien and Lucia. No updates, no pleas. I wondered if he was stewing in anger, or if perhaps they really were trying to manage on their own. Part of me was proud that I'd mustered the strength to stand up for myself. Another part felt uneasy, worrying about baby Nico. One afternoon, I was trimming my basil plants when a call from an unknown number pinged. I hesitated, then answered, half expecting a telemarketer. Instead, an all too familiar voice blasted through. Rowena, how dare you cut us off like this? Lucia. She'd chosen to bypass my block on her cell by using a landline, apparently. Her words were brimming with anger. Damien told me you're done sending money. Do you know what position that puts us in? We have a baby, mortgage, insurance. You swore to help until we were stable. I suppressed the urge to snap back. Lucia, I didn't swear to finance your life indefinitely. I helped because I love Damien and Nico, and I assumed you did too. I realize now it's not my job to keep you afloat. If I'm so inconvenient, then you shouldn't rely on me to pay your bills. Her breath hissed on the other end. So that's how it is? You're punishing us because you had a rough time on our couch? Grow up. Parenting is tough. If you think we were too harsh, you should have said something. Don't just ruin our finances because you're feeling petty. I bristled. Petty is shutting off the AC while I'm holding a sweating, wailing baby in the dead of summer. Petty is ignoring me day in and day out, then expecting me to keep funding a life that treats me like a doormat. I'm not punishing you, Lucia. I'm letting you reap the consequences of your own actions. The call ended with a string of bitter words on her side, but I couldn't make them all out. My hands shook. I set down the shears, pressing a palm to my chest, swallowing the complex swirl of regret and relief. Still with me? Let me know if you think Rowena made the right call. 1 for yes, 2 for no. After that heated exchange, I steeled myself for more fallout, social media gossip, nasty texts, or worse, being ostracized by Damien. Surprisingly, the next few days were quiet, almost too quiet. I went about my routine in a surreal calm, suspecting a brewing storm behind the scenes. Sure enough, the storm arrived in the form of whispered rumors. A friend from the neighborhood center approached me one morning, concern written on her face. "Rowena, are you all right?" she asked, lowering her voice as though discussing a scandal. "Someone told me Lucia's been saying you abandoned your own grandson, that you'd rather spend money on yourself than help your family. Is that true?" My stomach twisted at the thought of how Lucia must be spinning the narrative, but I kept my chin high. "I didn't abandon anyone," I said calmly. "I was never their live-in nanny. I was a guest in my son's home, and I was treated poorly. Lucia can say what she wants. I know my truth." My friend patted my arm sympathetically, promising not to judge, but the awkwardness in her eyes told me the rumors had spread like wildfire. Later, I ventured onto social media, something I rarely did, and saw subtle jabs from Lucia's profile. Vague posts like, "Some people pretend to care about family, but walk away when real help is needed." The comments from her acquaintances, many of whom had never met me, were sympathetic to her. I felt a wave of indignation rising. But what could I do? Engage in an online war? No, that would only fuel the drama. Instead, I posted a serene photo of my blooming geraniums with the caption, "The best growth happens in the light of truth." Cryptic, maybe, but it was my way of reminding myself to hold on to my own peace. Then I logged off. The digital realm wasn't going to fix my broken relationship with my son and his wife. If they wanted to slander me online, that was their choice. My silence would be my shield. Besides, a part of me suspected that once finances hit them hard, they'd have more pressing things to worry about than social media. Meanwhile, life had a way of reminding me that not everything revolves around family drama. A few days later, I developed a concerning cough and slight fever. At first, I shrugged it off as a seasonal bug, but it persisted, leaving me fatigued and with bouts of dizziness. I visited the local clinic for a checkup. The doctor recommended rest, fluids, and a round of antibiotics. Normally, I would have called Damien or a close family member for help, but given the tension, I kept quiet. As I reclined on my own comfortable couch, ironically noting how soft it felt compared to Damien's lumpy one, I realized how grateful I was for the peace of my home. If I still lived under their roof, hypothetically, since they never even offered me a real room, I'd have been running around, caring for Nico, cooking, and ignoring my own health out of guilt. Now I could nurse myself back to wellness at my own pace, free from scornful looks. Around this time, a text came in from Damien. "Mom, can we talk?" My stomach fluttered. I wondered if he'd call me a traitor or if he'd say Lucia had changed her mind. Gingerly, I typed back, "I'm a bit under the weather. Maybe tomorrow?" Almost instantly, he replied, "Sure, feel better." A short but polite response. I took that as a sign of progress. Curled up in a blanket, sipping warm tea, I thought back to the day I had boarded the bus to see them. I'd been so excited, so certain that my help would be celebrated. How drastically everything had changed in such a short time. My gaze fell on a framed photo of Damien as a toddler, perched on my lap, both of us all smiles under a golden sunset. It hurt to see how far we'd drifted, but I also knew I couldn't be the parent who just kept giving without receiving basic decency in return. Sometimes love requires tough decisions, even if it means risking your child's disapproval. Quick break. If you've been here from the start, you're awesome. Comment 1 if you think there's hope for Rowena and Damien's relationship to heal, or 2 if you believe it's beyond repair. So, the next day I felt marginally better, enough to chat with Damien on the phone. When I picked up, I heard not anger, but something close to desperation in his voice. Mom, we're in trouble with the mortgage, he confessed. We fell behind this month, and Lucia's part-time job isn't covering what we thought it would. I know you're upset, but is there any chance you can lend us even half of what you used to? My chest tightened. I recalled the old pattern, Damien appealing to my sense of duty, using finances as the last-ditch lifeline. Damien, I said carefully, I understand you're struggling, but please hear me out. What's your plan for the future? Even if I gave you money this month, what about next month? Will you keep depending on me until I'm broke? He paused, and I heard the soft sounds of baby Nico fussing in the background. No, we're trying to figure something out. Lucia's looking into online work, and I might pick up a second gig, but we're going to lose the house at this rate, Mom. I swallowed hard. Maybe losing that house wouldn't be the end of the world, I said, my voice low. It's big, it's expensive, and you two are drowning in it. Downsizing might be wise, and it's not your only option. You could rent out a room or move in with Lucia's family for a while. There are solutions that don't involve me depleting my retirement fund. He didn't answer right away, and I suspected he was grappling with wounded pride. That's not ideal, he managed finally. But I hear you. I just wish things weren't so hard. I exhaled, a pang of sympathy blooming within me. I loved him so fiercely, but I also understood that continuing to bail him out would never break this cycle. Damien, I hope you see that I care about you. This isn't me turning my back. It's me valuing myself enough to stop being used. If you truly want to fix this, talk to Lucia. Make a plan. I'll be here to guide you, but not to bankroll you. A week later, I got a glimpse of the changes taking root. Painful though they might be for Damien and Lucia. A mutual friend mentioned they were selling some of the extravagant baby gear they'd purchased early on, a high-end stroller, an expensive bassinet with built-in lullabies, and fancy brand-name onesies that Nico had barely even worn. Lucia posted them on a mom's forum, apparently trying to free up some cash. It occurred to me that practicality might finally be sinking in. I also heard a rumor that Lucia was scouting potential tenants for their unused spare room, the very room they once told me was too cluttered for me to sleep in. The irony wasn't lost on me. Yet, a small part of me cheered them on. If they were willing to rent out that space, perhaps it signaled a genuine effort to become financially self-reliant. One evening, my phone chirped with a message from Lucia herself. Rowena, I know we haven't been on good terms. I'm sorry if I was rude. We're just stressed about money. Hope you're well. I stared at the screen, my emotions jumbled. It was a basic apology, likely spurred by financial desperation, but at least it was something. I typed back slowly, choosing my words with care. Thank you for the message, Lucia. I appreciate the apology. I'm fine, recovering from a slight flu. Nico's well, I hope? Her reply came fast. He's fine, teething, but okay, hang in there. It wasn't warm or overly friendly, but it also wasn't dripping with hostility. Progress, I told myself, baby steps. I reread our short exchange, recalling how this same woman had once snapped at me for turning on the air conditioner. Yet, even a shred of civility felt like a bridge, thin and precarious, but a bridge nonetheless. Late that night, I curled up with a novel, letting the calm wash over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful that maybe, just maybe, the love we had for each other could be salvaged, even if the old dynamic was gone forever. Curious if you think Lucia's apology is genuine or just a bid for money? Comment 1 for genuine, 2 for a strategic move. The following Sunday, I decided to visit a local art fair, a small promise I'd made to myself back when I was too busy doting on Damien's family to think about my own happiness. Strolling among the stalls of handcrafted pottery, watercolor paintings, and artisan jewelry, I felt a refreshing surge of personal freedom. I bought myself a delicate silver bracelet, something I would never have indulged in before when I was sending $3,000 a month to support another household. The simple act of making a small purchase for me felt liberating, a reminder that my life wasn't over just because my son had grown up. As I wandered through the fair, I noticed a booth offering classes in ceramic arts. The instructor, a cheerful woman with clay-smudged hands, waved me over. "Interested in exploring pottery?" she asked. I found myself nodding, curiosity piqued. Why not? For so long, my identity had revolved around being a mother, a caretaker, a financial backer. Maybe it was time to invest in something purely for my own joy. I signed up for a class right then. The instructor grinned, handing me a flyer with the schedule. "You won't regret it," she assured me, and I believed her. Tucking the flyer into my bag, I reveled in the anticipation of a new creative outlet. Who said retirement had to be dull? That evening, back at home, I brewed a cup of jasmine tea and reflected on how drastically my life had shifted in just a few weeks. No longer was I dreading phone calls from Damien or waiting for the next crisis. If they were coping or still struggling, they'd have to manage. I was reclaiming the time and money I'd once funneled into a one-sided arrangement. By the time I finished my tea, I realized something profound. I still loved my family, but I loved myself as well, and I would never again sacrifice one for the other. In the quiet hush of my living room, I felt the stirrings of an identity I'd neglected for years. Rowena, a woman who deserved more than just being a silent pillar of support. A few weeks later, my new routine was in full swing. Twice a week, I donned comfortable clothes and headed to the ceramics class, where I learned to knead clay, shape bowls, and grin proudly at my lopsided creations. The other students were a mix of ages, from teenagers exploring an art credit to retirees like me seeking something fresh. The instructor praised our efforts, reminding us that perfection wasn't the goal, expression was. Meanwhile, I started hearing whispers that Damien and Lucia were making changes. They'd sold a few high-end baby items, rented out their spare room to a college student, and Damien had even taken on a side gig editing videos for local businesses. The extra money was helping them catch up on bills, though they'd had to tighten their budget significantly. There were nights when Damien texted me in exasperation about how Lucia was upset they couldn't dine out or buy brand-name diapers anymore. "Adulting is hard, Mom," one of his messages read. I responded with a gentle but firm, "I know, and I'm glad you're learning." The negativity from Lucia online seemed to taper off too. Fewer cryptic posts, fewer jabs at people who abandoned their grandchildren. Maybe she'd realized the only real solution was for them to stand on their own feet. Or perhaps Damien had a serious talk with her about the cost of severing ties with me altogether. And so, my life found a new balance. My finances were no longer hemorrhaging into their mortgage. My days were no longer spent cooking or babysitting without thanks. I still missed Nico, and yes, I missed the idea of a warm, close-knit family. But I recognized that sometimes love means giving room for others to grow, even if they must stumble and fall on their path to independence. One evening, as I was putting away a freshly crafted vase, my phone lit up with a video call from Damien. Surprised, I answered, and there on the screen was Nico's chubby face, sporting a toothless grin. My heart melted into a puddle right there, but I held steady, bracing for whatever came next. "Say hi to Grandma," Damien coaxed, though Nico was too young to do much more than babble excitedly. But the sound of his voice, soft coos that rose and fell like miniature waves, was enough to make me beam. For a moment, the tension between me and Damien didn't exist. My grandson's wide-eyed innocence transcended all the hurt. "Hey, Mom," Damien finally said, clearing his throat. "Nico's been doing better. He's teething, so that's a pain, but we're managing." In the background, I could see their living room. Gone was the clutter of unopened baby gear. A simpler bassinet stood near the couch, a second-hand stand fan in the corner. It looked more lived in, more real, not the showroom of unattainable perfection Lucia once insisted upon. Lucia hovered just out of the camera's frame, but I heard her voice. "Rowena, hi." Was that actual warmth? My eyebrows arched in surprise. "Hello, Lucia," I replied softly. She offered a quick wave, a faint smile flickering across her features before stepping away. Progress indeed. Damien turned the camera back to Nico. "We wanted to show you he's okay. We've been, learning a lot. Didn't think we'd have to pinch pennies so hard, but it's working out." He exhaled, and I caught a glimpse of sincerity in his eyes that had been missing before. I'm sorry for taking you for granted." A pause. "We both are." My throat constricted. This was what I'd yearned for, some admission of remorse, a sign that they finally understood. "Thank you," I managed, voice trembling. "I'm not trying to be spiteful or punish anyone. I just want you two to be responsible and to treat me with basic respect." Damien nodded, lips pursed. He seemed older, more humbled, and that was a good thing, a necessary heartbreak that forced growth. We wrapped up the call soon after. I ended with a cheerful wave to Nico, promising to see him soon if circumstances allowed. When I set my phone down, I felt a renewed sense of peace. Maybe we weren't back to the easy closeness of old, but a new foundation was forming, one built on honesty, responsibility, and dare I hope, mutual respect. Time for some quick audience feedback. Comment 1 if this reconciliation warms your heart, or 2 if you're still skeptical about their sincerity. In the following weeks, the subtle reconciliation took shape. Damien called more often, not to beg for money, but to share updates about Nico, his first tooth, his attempts at rolling over, and cute baby noises. Lucia sent me short video clips, albeit with minimal commentary, but it felt like an olive branch extended across the digital sphere. Part of me wanted to rush over there with gifts and cradle Nico for hours, but I held back, determined not to repeat old patterns. Meanwhile, my own life blossomed. I found myself out in the sunshine more, walking to the library, meeting a friend for brunch, or even just enjoying a quiet evening on my balcony with a glass of lemonade. The art of pottery had become an unexpected passion. My latest project, a tall vase with swirling patterns, stood half-finished on the table, waiting for its final touches. I had never realized how peaceful it could be to mold wet clay, coaxing it into something beautiful at my own pace. No pressure, no deadlines, no unspoken demands. One afternoon, I got a call from Damien, who sounded genuinely upbeat. "Mom, we just wanted you to know we rented the spare room, and it's actually helped us a lot. Lucia's doing some freelance graphic design work from home. Things are looking better." There was an undercurrent of pride in his voice, as though he'd found solid footing for the first time. "That's wonderful," I replied, sincere happiness flooding me. "I always believed you two could manage as long as you tried." A quiet chuckle. "Yeah, well, trying was the hard part," he admitted. "We got complacent, Mom. We relied on you too much. I see that now. I don't blame you for stepping away." I bit my lip, emotions swirling. "Damien, I love you. And I love Nico. That won't change, but I need to be respected as your mother, not just used as a wallet." He hesitated, voice soft. "I know. I promise. We'll do better." And for the first time in a long while, I believed him. The day I finally visited again, I came on my own terms. Damien picked me up at the station, greeting me with a warm hug that dispelled weeks, perhaps months, of tension. His eyes shone with gratitude, and I noticed subtle changes about him, a new humility, perhaps, etched into the lines of his face. Lucia was at the door when we arrived. Nico balanced on her hip. She gave me a small, tentative smile, then gently transferred the baby into my arms. My heart nearly burst at the feel of that soft weight and the sweet scent of baby shampoo. Nico giggled as if to say, "Welcome back, Grandma." They'd tidied up the place considerably, though it was modest now that many luxury baby items were gone. A bright turquoise fan whirred in the living room, chasing away the heat. "We use the AC sparingly," Damien explained sheepishly, "but we don't deny ourselves or Nico a cool breeze when it's truly hot. We learned our lesson." Lucia's cheeks pinkened and she nodded. "I'm sorry about before. I was out of line. We were stressed. I was postpartum, but that's no excuse. We we appreciate you." I didn't push for the grand apology. The fact that she admitted any wrongdoing was enough. I squeezed her hand, a gesture of forgiveness hanging between us unspoken. Nico babbled something that sounded like "Baba," and we all laughed, tension dissolving. Lucia ushered me to the couch, but this time they had prepared the guest room. "We cleared out the clutter," she said, opening the door. A simple bed, nightstand, and a small dresser awaited me. "You can stay here if you'd like," she added, voice soft. I swallowed hard, touched in ways I couldn't express. "Thank you," I murmured. It was a tangible symbol that I was no longer relegated to the sidelines. That night, after Nico went down for bed, the three of us shared a simple dinner. Nothing fancy, just some roasted chicken, rice, and stir-fried vegetables. It was mild enough that I could enjoy it without feeling my stomach burn. And for the first time in what felt like ages, we talked, really talked, about the challenges of new parenthood, finances, my pottery class, and everything in between. Folks, let me know if you'd accept Lucia's apology in this situation. Comment 1 for yes, 2 for no. That night, I curled up in the guest bed, resting on clean sheets that smelled of lavender fabric softener, just as they did at my own home. The window was cracked open to let in a gentle breeze, and the hum of the turquoise fan lulled me into a state of calm reflection. In the next room, I heard Lucia's soft murmurs to Nico and Damien's gentle laugh at something the baby did. The tension that once choked these walls seemed lifted, replaced by a more authentic sense of togetherness. Before drifting off, my mind traveled back through the entire journey, from the moment I first answered Damien's call to help, to the shock of being assigned to a couch and scolded for using AC, to the heartbreak that drove me to pack my suitcase and walk away. It had felt like betrayal on so many levels, but the distance I created, both physically and financially, had forced them to grow, and in that growth, we found a new kind of closeness, one built on clarity, not blind sacrifice. In the morning, I awoke to the sound of birds chirping outside. The warm sun glowed through the curtains, and I indulged in the comfort of lying in bed a little longer. No urgent baby cries demanding my immediate attention. Slipping out of the room, I found Damien in the kitchen, preparing coffee. He offered me a mug, steam curling above the dark liquid. Lucia was on the floor with Nico, helping him practice rolling over. The sight made my heart swell. They smiled at me. It wasn't forced or resentful, just honest. Eventually, I said my goodbyes, promising to visit again. This time not as a desperate nanny or a manipulated ATM, but as a grandmother and a mother who loved them. And that love, tempered by boundaries and self-respect, felt stronger than ever. My son forced me to babysit and sleep on the couch once, yes, but I cut off his allowance, and maybe that ruthless act was exactly what we all needed to finally see each other as real people, worthy of care and respect in our own right. Thank you for reading this lengthy journey. If you found it meaningful, comment 1 to say it resonated, or 2 if you have any additional thoughts or suggestions. And please share where you've been reading from. I'm genuinely curious. And that concludes today's powerful and thought provoking story. Thank you so much for joining us here at her Fireside Stories. What do you think? Did our grandmother do the right thing by pulling the financial plug on her son? Or do you think families should support each other unconditionally, no matter what? We'd love to hear your thoughts, personal experiences, and where you tuned in from. So please share your opinions in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell. There are many more incredible stories coming your way. Your support helps us continue sharing these emotional journeys and deep lessons on family, boundaries, and self-respect. Until next time, stay warm, stay thoughtful, and we'll see you soon right here at Her Fireside Stories.